Hello, everybody. So I'm here with Pastor Gary, and today we're going to talk a little bit about hearing the voice of God. So I remember when I was first learning to hear His voice and to develop spiritual ears, I just had a lot of questions like, was it actually for everybody? And how do you hear God's voice? What does it sound like? And you were actually one of the people that really walked me through that season and just brought a lot of clarity. So I would love to just hear what you would say to somebody in that boat that is learning to hear God's voice, wants to develop their spiritual ears.
Sure, I mean, totally. Those are all good questions and good places to start for sure. So the first question that you asked was, is it for everybody? Absolutely, it's for everybody. And the way that you develop that, I think in a lot of this conversation, I think about when my own children, the Bible talks about us being the children of the Lord, and that He has a good plan for us. And so for us to live in that plan, Jesus came that we'd have life and have that life more abundantly. We've got to think about scriptures like Romans 8:6, where He says, to set your mind on the flesh is death, but to set your mind on the Spirit is life and peace. And when we think about that, getting our mind over there, getting our thoughts over there, we need to be open to hearing the voice of the Lord all the time. So no matter where we are, no matter what's going on, we're hearing His voice. He's directing us. He's leading us through our lives. And so I think about with my boys, I have 4 of them. My oldest is 21, the youngest in his mid-teens now. So when I think about it, this is not right now with them, but this was earlier when they were first born. Right in the birthing room, I could say something and they'd turn to look and see where that was coming from. They already recognized my voice right away out of the womb. Beth would speak and they turned to look for her because they knew our voices already. And when you think about that, that's because 9 months they'd been hearing us.
Right.
That was the main voice that they would hear all the time. And when you think about it as a child in the home, when you're living there and they're growing up and you're mostly at home, it's you and them, and they get to know your voice so well. And in the middle of all of that, you can go out somewhere, and I could say, even at 2-3 years old, I could call their name in the middle of a crowded room, and they could pick out my voice. But that's because they had spent so much time with me. They had spent so much time with Beth as in those early days, just in the midst of our own home, the quietness of our lives together while we were going. And we would be talking to them, and they'd hear us talking to each other, but those voices that they heard so often and all the time, they could pick out right away. So in the midst of a crowd, or we could be outside, and one of them could be heading towards the street, and I could call their name and say, "Hey, David, hey, Jesse, Josiah, Matthew." I could call any one of them, and all of a sudden they'd stop and they'd look because they knew Dad was calling. And I think that same thing we want that to be true of us with our Heavenly Father.
Absolutely.
So that when He calls and says, "Alicia, stop, turn around, you're headed for trouble," that you hear Him. But also when He stops and He says, "Hey, Alicia, I'm proud of you. I love you. I think you're doing great." You want to hear those things as well. Mm-hmm. Or if He stops and just wants to teach you math, if He wants to teach you,
Hallelujah.
We're talking with kids, and that's true. I mean, I know in high school, I went through high school having learned His voice, and I could have Him help me in the midst of an exam. And throughout my life, there's things that He just brings back to my remembrance, and He helps me with all of those things. And so, spending time with Him, the quiet time, and that's hard nowadays because we get so used to, rather than being quiet, I want to pick up my phone and message somebody, or I want to put on YouTube, or I want to put on the TV, watch some more sports, or do all of these things and just keep noise going.
Right, yeah.
But we need to be able to stop and slow down and take the time to learn how just to be quiet and listen to His voice. Anyway, that's some things, and the more you do that, the more time you spend in true worship with totally opening your heart and everything, that becomes that voice that you hear the most. And does that all make sense?
Yeah, so it's a lot about just removing distractions and spending time being quiet with the Lord, developing your spiritual ears.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Those are absolute great keys in time. So the more we remove the distractions, the Bible talks about fasting. And Jesus, actually talking to the disciples who had tried to cast out a devil, said, this type only comes out by prayer and fasting. And sometimes people think fasting is just food. But we can fast all those distractions too. I can say, I'm not going to listen to, I'm not going to watch TV for a week or a month or whatever. I know for Beth and I, there was a season that the Lord told us, I don't want you watching any TV for a whole year. And so we went for a whole year. He did say, you could watch some preacher or listen to some teaching as we were learning and studying and all of that kind of thing. But there was no secular TV for a whole year. And there were some things that happened on the inside of us to really tune us into.
Wow.
Because you didn't come home and just turn the TV on and have noise.
Yeah, exactly.
So
That's awesome.
anyway, removing the distractions, it's absolutely key to hearing His voice and being purposeful about it. I think in the beginning with you, one of the things that I mentioned was taking time to, just like, because you were a young single lady at the time, I guess you're still a young single lady, but at that time I said, instead of dating some guy and spending some time there and keeping that distraction going, why don't you date God? And so the same time that you would spend if you were dating a guy to go out for coffee or to go out to a show, why don't you take the time to just go have coffee with God?
Yeah.
And so you got to be purposeful about it too, because if you're going to have that kind of relationship with a guy or something, you got to be purposeful about it. And then once that is there and that relationship, now I'm married, I have to be purposeful to still take my wife out on dates, to still spend time pursuing my wife. And so you have to take time to still pursue. You have to take time to keep that relationship up once it's there.
Yeah. That idea of dating God was, it was really impactful to me because you could, I would go to a coffee shop and I could leave the distractions at home. I could leave my phone behind, the TV behind, all of that. So that was a really good tool for me. But yeah, it feels like we have a lot more to cover on this topic. So
I'm sure we do, yeah.
yeah, so we will probably do some more videos like this, and so I just want to invite you guys to stay tuned. Thanks for listening,
Yeah.
and I hope you guys have a blessed day.